I'm Krish, and I am the founder of Tales to Inspire, a social enterprise that shares people's stories to encourage people to never give up, whether that's in the school environment or whether that's in the workplace. And we have our podcast, our blog, we have our website, and we do lots of inspirational things all around the power of real life stories. And this evening, we have two of our incredible ambassadors. We have Meg Holloway and we have Daniel Jones sharing their stories this evening. And the theme is neurodiversity. Essentially, anything around neurodiversity. And the way it's going to work is Meg's going to share her story, and then we're going to go into Dan's story, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, which essentially is you can fire as many questions as possible at Meg and at Daniel, and essentially they'll answer those questions, and we'll have that panel discussion, and we can have that communication within the call. So this is part of 4 live events that we're doing every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks. We have 4 different themes with 8 of our ambassadors in total, and as you've seen, they're completely free, because we really want to try and make it as accessible as possible to anyone who wants to come to these events. Meg shared her story with us in January of this year. She's one of our most recent ambassadors, and myself and Meg came across each other through my partner, Mel. Actually, the first time we met was out in the Lake District on a hill/mountain, and Meg has this incredible dog, and essentially that was just talking to a dog, and then we got communicating, and she was always telling her dog off on the walk, which was really funny. Her story's just gone out, and it got over 12,000 interactions on our podcast and on our social media channels, which is amazing in itself. So Meg, I'm just going to hand it over to you. If you'd like to take it away, please go ahead.
Oh, thanks, dude. I did not know that either. Talk about imposter syndrome. I didn't realize it had that much engagement. Yeah, so hi everybody. So yeah, my name's Meg. I have lived in a few places in the UK, but I'm actually based in the Lake District. I'm mad about hiking and all things outdoors, so I moved up here a couple of years ago. And yeah, gosh, where do I start with my story? So I grew up in the Midlands. I went to uni. I did journalism at uni. Loved kind of interacting with people and being super creative and curious, I think is probably the best word. And when I left uni, I was very aware, like many of us, that I literally didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So as a kid, I'd done lots of like performing arts and all that kind of stuff. Just flitted about with my head in the clouds, to be honest. And then entered the big bad world of adulthood and was like, shit. So I actually I fell into event management, worked in like festival events, which I loved. I got to do a bit of traveling with it, which was awesome. And then that kind of kicked off throughout my 20s, doing lots of different jobs. So I went from like events and festivals, I did like project work, then jumped back into events. I did a bit of HR stuff, and just could never seem to find my place in the world. And throughout my 20s, noticed that I was quite a sensitive person. I was quite empathetic, but I just always had these big crazy ideas that never really seemed to fit anywhere specifically. I was always, people would entertain my ideas, but it was also very much but that's not going to work for us kind of thing, which I just really struggled with. I remember one particular role basically being told like, you don't know how to manage up. So I wasn't very good with like leadership and CEOs and stuff like that, because I just liked working with people in general. So then towards the end of my 20s, I was working in internal communications. So I was doing lots with like employee experience and things like that. And I realized that I really enjoyed that because I got to work with people, but also it was quite impactful. The work that I was doing was quite impactful. So I thought, right, how can I, do that even bigger? Had gone through COVID, and I was one of those people, like many of us, who were like, right, I need to do something different. So I joined an agency, an internal communications agency, believing that I would get to work with lots of different companies, and that would be really great exposure, and I'd get to be super, super creative. And the role was also fully remote, which I also thought was the absolute dream. And about not even 3-4 months into that role, I was a very great, shiny, new, sparkly employee who had lots of ideas. And then that started to like burn off a bit. And within, about 3 to 4 months, I realized that I was really, really struggling with how agencies work. The remoteness made me feel incredibly lonely. And the work that I was doing was for lots of different brands, but it would get handed over to that brand to then deliver. So all of a sudden, what I loved doing, which was creating impact and helping people, I was kind of like once removed from it again. And my colleagues were all over the UK. So I got to interact with them over Teams. And just felt incredibly lonely. I was living on my own at the time as well with my dog. There's only so much you can talk to your dog. But what I call my nemesis and the turning point for me in my late 20s in my career was that, for anybody who's ever worked in an agency, I got introduced to timesheets, which I sound really dramatic when I say that that was a nemesis, but it really was horrendous. Being asked to account for every single minute of your working day and realizing that I'd never had to do that before. And then double realizing that there was not a chance in hell that for my entire career I had ever worked for 7.5 to 8 hours every single day. And just started to reflect on, oh my God, so how have I ever managed to keep a job? And thinking, if I got bored of something, I'd just go do something else. I'd go talk to somebody, or I'd just do a new piece of work, or what have you. And it was crippling, because for anybody who's ever worked for an agency, it kind of is how they charge your clients. It's how they make money, is knowing where all the different parts kind of come together. So I got in trouble a few times, but going from one, you haven't done your timesheet in 3 weeks, right through to Meg, how did it take you 3 hours to do this piece of work on that day? And then a week later, it only took you 20 minutes to do the same piece of work. And I had no answer. I couldn't describe why sometimes I could just get it done, and other times it was like somebody was sticking needles in my eyes. So around the end of 2021, I was visiting my sister, and we were chatting one evening, and she asked me how the job was going, and I'd only been there like 6 months by then. And I just burst out crying, and was just basically talking about timesheets. And she was like, what the hell? Like, it's just a bit of admin, right? And I explained to her, like, this doesn't compute in my brain. I cannot explain to you. I have no idea how long I've spent on anything today. And there's work with some extremely tight deadlines attached to it. And I just can't seem to get it done. Or when I do get it done, I'm literally doing it like an hour before I'm supposed to hand it in. And blah, 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 blah. All this stuff's coming out. And my sister turned to me, my gorgeous sister, and she said, Meg, do you think you have ADHD? And what she didn't know is that for about 4 months, I had been researching and Googling to death what was wrong with me. And everything that came back said ADHD. And I had told nobody. So the fact that my sister was stood in front of me saying that made me cry even harder, obviously. But that was a real release for me. That was a real kind of turning moment of, okay, maybe I'm not making this up. Maybe I really do think in a different way. So I seeked diagnosis. I'm always happy to share. I did go privately. I was living in South Wales at the time. I went through my GP, and they said, no problem. She was very good with me, actually, my GP. No problem. I'm going to put you on the waiting list. It'll be about 3 years. And I just remember being like, I can't wait 3 years to find out what is going on with my brain. It's painful kind of thing. So I went private. I used some savings and I went private. And Because I have ADHD, it actually took me a while to get through my assessment because I kept forgetting to send stuff in and get in touch with people and stuff. But in 2022, start of 2022, I was diagnosed with ADHD, with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I was combined as well. So I have both the inattentiveness and the hyperactivity. And that kind of kicked off this really awesome journey of I finally felt like I'd been given permission, I'm gonna say, which I changed my mind later, but at the time I was given permission to go find out more about my brain, which is what I did. I read every single book going. I really looked at how I worked, and it was around that time that I was reading a lot about how people with ADHD do really well working for themselves, and I had secretly always wanted to work for myself. I just didn't quite know what that looked like. But I, started thinking about what do I love to do? What's the most important thing to me? And I've always had this mission to help people. That's always been really, really strong with me. And years previous, I'd had an incredible boss who also was a exec leadership coach, if you like, but she was a coach. She had coaching skills. And I was just absolutely just mesmerized by the way that she was with people, how people went to her for help, how she could kind of get a whole room to work together. And I'd then harbored this limiting belief for years of like, I'm too young, I don't have, experience to be a coach, all these kind of things. And I think part of getting my diagnosis also gave me this thing of like, you have to change things for yourself. You can't expect the world to change for you. And you can't sit and wait for somebody to say, hey, Meg, you'd be a really good coach. You should go do your coach training. So I was like, sod it, I'm going to do it. So I was selling my house around the time. I found the right course that I wanted to do, and I spent a lot of money on a 12-month training course to become a coach. So I wanted to be ICF accredited, which is like International Coaching Federation. I went full geek teacher's pet. I want the best accreditation I can get. I want to get the best coaching skills I can get. I'm willing to pay the money. And within 6 months, I did this alongside my 9 to 5. And within 6 months of that, I realized that I wanted to make that a business. So I played around a little bit with the words and the names and what you want to call your company, which is not the most important thing when you want to start a business, but that's where we all start, is what do we want to call it and what do we want the logo to look like? And I landed on the Joy Project, which is what I stuck with. And the reason I went with the Joy Project was because I believe life is one big project, it's constantly changing, things go wrong, things go right, people come in and out of it. But there was something about the word joy for me. So happiness is great, absolutely, but happiness for me can be a little bit fleeting. It usually comes in like good moments of your life. Whereas joy for me, it felt like even when you're in some of the darkest periods of your life, you can still find joy in the smallest of little things. So the Joy Project was born. And when I say I went hell for leather, hyper focus in ADHD terms of setting up this business, I went for it. It became all I could think about. It's all I wanted to do. I became the shittest employee ever because I was constantly thinking about my business. And literally just before I graduated in my course, I quit my job and took the Joy Project full time. And still managing my ADHD. I will say I chose, and it is a decision that people have to make, I chose to go medication free. So I don't take medication for my ADHD. Instead, what I did was I got ADHD coaching. Because obviously I was a massive advocate for life coaching and for coaching in general. So I got an ADHD coach. And that really helped me to kind of manage how I set up my business in a way that works for me, because a lot of business advice out there is for neurotypical, and there's actually, you can think about it in a slightly different way for neurodivergent. And I realized, I'm quite open on my social media about my ADHD. I realized that I was attracting clients who either had it, were being tested for it, or they didn't realize they had it, and I absolutely knew that they definitely did. And as wonderful as my ICF training was, it wasn't the perfect fit for coaching people with ADHD. So I upskilled again last year and I trained to be an ADHD coach as well. And I'll admit a lot of me doing that course was to find out more for myself, but it then meant that I could go on and help other people with ADHD. Which kind of brings me to where I am now. So I'm a life and ADHD coach. I mostly work with what I call millennial good girls. So they're the people pleasers of the world. They're the always put other people before themselves. They're the want to change their career and they're scared. Me a couple of years ago, basically. And then obviously I work with a lot of ADHD clients as well. And compared to where I was 4 or 5 years ago, like I adore my life and I adore my brain as well. I am very ADHD positive, so I'm very much strengths-based coach. I think it's a wonderful category of mind to have. Very aware of the challenges that come with it. But I am every day an advocate for it's a wonderful brain to have when you're working with it, not against it. And that's me basically. That's my story. Have I ran over? I probably have, haven't I?
Haven't, Meg. You are bang on time. It's amazing, which is incredible. Just amazing. The chat function has been going off, by the way. So essentially, just lots of people commenting all sorts of incredibleness, saying, basically, let me just go. And a lot of people who have ADHD and gone private recently. Timesheets are a devil. Huge part of why sales destroyed me in the end. One of our members have said. So yeah, so essentially, loads of people saying a lot of things about resonating with your story. Now, just for everyone who's on the call today, I have put Meg's details of the Joy Project into the chat, so you can check that out as well. You can find out more about Meg's story via our website at Tales to Inspire. But Meg's staying on. So if you've got any questions, don't fire them away right now. Write them down or just keep them in your head and fire them away after Dan has spoken. But Meg, thank you so much. That was so cool. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, so cool. So excited. The next one we do of these has to be in person.
Yeah.
You're definitely invited. We'll have to do it in the lakes. I think go for a walk.
Perfect.
And then we'll do one in Anglesey with Dan, and then that'll just be amazing. So, Meg, thank you so much. I am going to bring it over to Dan now. So, essentially, we have Dan with us, Dan Jones. Now, Dan actually shared, Dan, you might not remember this, but you shared your story with us in August of 2020. It feels like ages ago. It wasn't even a year when we started Tales to Inspire. We're in our 5th year this year. So it was really the beginning for what things we were doing. And essentially, it was a really special time. And you were doing amazing. Your subscriber list was going through the roof and everything. I was like, this guy's never going to reply to my email, but let's see. And you replied, and you was like, yeah, let's do it. And you're so cool about it. So essentially, Dan's been an ambassador of Tales to Inspire since 2020. And now I've kind of made the determination with our speakers to inspire, which we've just launched. And then essentially our live events getting back up and running. I was like, let's get Dan as involved as we can moving forward. And Dan was like, yes, let's do it. So, Dan, I'm just going to hand it over to you, mate. Please take it away.
Chris, thank you so much, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it. And I was so there. 2020, it was crazy, right? Crazy time, and it was amazing to be a part of something that was making change in the world because that's what we want to see, right? It's amazing. So, if anybody doesn't know who I am, my name is Daniel Jones, which is my given name, but my online persona is the Aspie World. So that's ASPIE World. It was kind of a weird name that I gave to my YouTube channel when I started, but it kind of stuck. So that's it now. But we just call ourselves TAW Media, so TAW Media now. So the Aspie World Media. That's my website, theaspieworld.com and all that stuff. So who am I? Well, I'm a best-selling author in 3 languages, in I'm an international best-selling author with Hay House and Penguin Random House on a book called Autism for Adults, which is amazing. I'm an award-winning YouTuber, so I have an award-winning YouTube channel, won a few awards. I'm a social media consultant and guru, and I consult with the government on legislation and in Europe and the UK and America about autism and things like that. I'm an international keynote speaker, and I'm also a director of a company, an AI-based accessibility company for autistic people called Authentic, which is pretty amazing. We're working on some crazy stuff. I am also a full-time influencer, digital social media influencer. And I release about 180 pieces of content a day across every single social media platform that exists. That comes from blogs to podcasts to quotecasts, Instagram videos, every single format you can think of. And that's what I do. That's kind of the long and the short of it. I have a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome and ADHD, which was later then updated to ASD, ADHD, alexithymia, pathological demand avoidance, dyslexia, and OCD, and a bunch of other things. I do suffer from mental health also with depression, anxiety, and stress-related anxiety. But that's fine because, you know, life is here to experience, right? And I'm learning every day. So a bit about my story. Let me tell you. So I'm like super old. Like I was born in 1986, right? So like I'm like super old. And so I had quite a traumatic childhood actually. You know, I found solace in computing, electronics, science, and robotics. I'm also a scientist as well. Although I'm not doing much in science right now, but I am a qualified scientist. So growing up as a kid who was undiagnosed as a young kid, it was very difficult. I was disconnected from my siblings. I had a difficult time. No, I don't sleep. I sleep about 4.5 hours a night, by the way. I do have a team of 5 people working with me. So sorry, I just saw the chat coming in there. I'm too distracted. And so in terms of childhood, you know, I was disconnected from my parents. My dad worked 7 days a week, morning till night, and my mother was a seamstress with 3 kids, one of them being a very homosexual, flamboyant man, and my sister being an atopic, a very sick child who was in hospital all the time, and then me, you know, this ADHD Asperger kid who was like just like in the corner, you know, get away from me. So it was difficult. It was a very traumatic childhood. And that's what it was. I'm not going to say anything. It was just what it was, and it taught me about life. And it was difficult because nobody understood me, and that was quite interesting. But what it did do is it put inside me something that like I knew that I couldn't trust the exterior of what I felt around me as being the safe space, right? People have safe spaces, but I realized that I am my safe space and anything I can do to create dopamine within myself, because we're all chasing dopamine, right? ADHD and autistic individuals. So robotics, computers, science, learning, mathematics, I loved all this stuff. So I was like able to just dive straight into that. And that became my blanket, which is fine because that bode well for me in the future, which is fine. So, my parents took me to see all kinds of doctors and specialists, right? But you're going back to like the late 80s, early 90s, it was not happening, right? Because so my mum's from Portsmouth, and my dad was born on Anglesey, but was between London and Anglesey and Portsmouth. So it's kind of like up here where I went to school on Anglesey, it was very difficult because there was no specialists here, right? Autism was quite relatively a new thing, and you know, they weren't really diagnosing it in North Wales. It was very difficult. So my parents would just start a loss, but rather than continue to try and find some kind of answers to help, they just kind of say, "Oh, that's Dan, just let him go on with it." You know, and he's not going to go outside. Maybe have agoraphobia. He's not going to be as happy as we want him to be, but that's him. He's a miserable sod. And that was their take on it, and whatever. Because it was great that they had that awfully negative view of me, because it built me up to who I am today. And I'm completely thankful for all the negative things, just as much as I am the positive things that happen in my life, because that creates me. So, after doing that, the UK healthcare system was a bit trashy then for autism. That's fine. When I was 11 years old, I became homeless. My entire family became homeless. We lost our business, we lost our house, we lost absolutely everything. I grew up, you know, when I was 11 years old, I was just transferring into high school, right? And I document this quite detailed in my book, Autism for Adults. But it's interesting, you know, you go from being a business owner and owning a house to then actually having nothing and literally being homeless, and your parents crying about how they're going to feed you. Like that was a really interesting time, but I understand those things. And again, great experience. What a fantastic experience for a young person to have, because now I know I'll never be able to do that to anybody else, because I know not to take those pitfalls. It was great. We're not going to look at things negatively. There's no need. Those negative things happen, but we move on from them, right? We learn. So I struggled through high school, struggled through primary school. It was horrendous. I never wanted to see primary school again, ever. It was horrible. Secondary school was okay because I got to like do crazy stuff and like be expelled and things, and it was all crazy good. But like dyeing my hair crazy colors and just doing crazy stuff. And it was okay. Secondary school was a great learning experience, but I left school with no qualifications, right? And that was really interesting. It was pinnacle because I had this like brain to thirst for knowledge. There's something very interesting about me. I have to constantly be learning things, otherwise my brain goes into depression mode, right? So how I wrote my book, I wrote a book, my latest book, Awesome for Adults. I wrote that in 2 weeks. I ran on a treadmill every day for 8 days for 1 hour, and I spoke to my phone. So I was running on the treadmill. I spoke to my phone, and that's how I wrote the book because I wanted to create. I knew exactly what I wanted to say in the book. I didn't have to research anything because obviously I know what I'm going to say, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be writing the book. Come on. So I was just talking to my phone and getting this out. But of course, my ADHD was getting really, dopamine hit because I'm running on this treadmill. But I'm getting tactile feedback because my legs are hitting this treadmill. Great experience. I highly recommend doing books like this. And so it was kind of like I was able to find again solace in things that I do when I'm kind of struggling at school. I was able to find solace in things that I do like running and educating myself because I had to always learn things. So I started learning like Chinese and things like that, and just really just I don't know, learning anything I get my hands on. I was really into like spiritualism and Buddhism and all that kind of stuff. Learned loads of stuff about all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, fast forward. I got diagnosed when I was 26 years old with autism. I was basically I worked in different jobs, right? Because I left school with no qualifications. Like, what do I do? So I was like, gotta think smart about this. So I went to work agencies to get me experience, and the experience bode way better than the qualifications. So I used the experience to then gain me leverage within an interview situation, and that worked really well. Then I worked my way up as doing a line 2 remote PC engineer for computers in America and Australia, blah blah blah. That was great, and I loved that because it was engaging my brain. The only problem was they then put me on telephones, and I was like, ugh. So I had to kind of like switch jobs, and I started working for an American healthcare company called McKesson. Interesting company, but we were dealing with reconciliation of financial reports, which was great. It was just numbers, everything was numbers, and then the company closed down, and I got made redundant. So then I went the last place I ever worked. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was a jack of all trades for a multimedia company, right? And they'd moved my desk around when I was on vacation. So I came back to the office. My desk was completely removed. I mean, it was a burnout, complete meltdown central. And then I was like, you can never go back there. This led to therapy, intense therapy, and then also a formal diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome at the time. Now, that was interesting because I knew nothing about autism at the time, and this is 2013. So I went online to try and find out about autism, knew nothing. I couldn't really read that because I'm dyslexic, right? So I was like, dang it, I want to learn more. So I went on YouTube, and there was nothing on YouTube. It was pretty pants, actually. Like, it was very dull, and there was nothing of any tangible kind of relatability. So I was like, do you know what? I got 26 years of surviving. Now I'm gonna make my life thrivable. I'm gonna document this. I'm gonna put it on YouTube, and maybe I can help somebody, right? So I did just that. And when I did that, something quite magical happened. The I don't know what you want to call it, like the algorithm just kind of was like, hey, this is Dan, and he's just put this video out about autism and blah blah blah. And then so people were like, I want to see more, because they were people just like me, like, hey, I want to learn more, right? So I was like, look, I'm a performing artist, I'm a multi-musician, right? I played music all over the world since I was very little. I toured the UK when I was 16. I was playing in an Elvis tribute band, and I played in punk rock bands and all kinds of stuff. And so I was like, I'm a performer, right? So I can put on a front for a video, bro. Like, come on, man, it's easy. So I did that, and I absolutely nailed it. And then my YouTube channel grew and grew and grew. So what happened was the basically the YouTube thing was kind of going on in the background. I was trying to sort my life out, right? Like, what am I going to do? And in 2017, my YouTube channel won an award for one of the most, it's called a YouTube Next Up. And basically they take a channel that has anything between 10,000 and 100,000 subscribers, and they supercharge you, and they take you to London and wine and dine you and teach you a little bit about YouTube to kind of really say, hey, you've got something quite magical about your channel, do it more. And I was like, oh, somebody gives a crap about me. This is really interesting. So I decided that I'd go all in. And so in the end of 2017, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to close all the doors behind me. I'm going to burn the bridges. I'm just going to go forward and make this a reality and do this for a living, because I wanted to help people. Like, it was so important to me, that reaching out to many, many people. And so in February 2018, I had this idea that if I learn every single thing about YouTube and how it works, I could become one of the biggest YouTubers in the world, right? And so I sat up every single night until about 3 o'clock in the morning, just digesting content constantly. I was just never a dull moment. I was just thirst for this knowledge, and then learn everything about social media. It was fantastic. So I was like, okay, boom. So I implemented it in 2018. And that was in January 2018 or February 2018. Now I had about 20,000 subscribers at this point. And I was watching a YouTube channel called Video Influencers, where they interview these like YouTube gurus, right, who grew their channel. And I was like, wow, learning so much from these dudes. That was February 2018. In June 2018, my channel had grown to almost 100,000 subscribers. I was invited over to LA to be in VidCon, which is the biggest video online social summit in the world, right? It's full of about 65,000 people over the course of the weekend. YouTube invited me over there, wine and dine me with YouTube. Video influencers interviewed me on their channel, how I grew so quickly. It was crazy mad. I was like, holy smokes. I was interviewed by CNN about like how disability entrepreneurship, how can that grow? And I was like, holy smokes, this is crazy, right? So then I knew I was like, I'm going to just do this like 10x. So I have this rule. I have a mindset of 10x, right? I'm going to 10x every single thing. Like nothing is ever enough. Like you say like, oh, 180 pieces of content. That's crazy. I'm like, that's not enough. Like I'm putting out stuff on the side. I'm constantly putting stuff out on the side. Like any situation I can be in where I can create content to reach more people, I will do that. Because people have this thing where they say, if I've just helped one person, I've just done my job. No, forget that. I want to help 6 billion people before I'll be happy, right? And then you might call me crazy, but we have this idea. But we say, if I want to buy a bike for $1,000, I'm going to save $1,000. If you come up short on $1,000, you don't get the bike. If you wanted a bike for $1,000, but you saved $12,000, then if you came up short on that, you probably be able to buy 3 bikes. So my idea is that if I'm going to reach 6 billion people on this planet. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out. I'm going to reach 6 billion people. Why? Because the world needs help. There's so many people on this planet that thrive for social connection, social help. I felt isolated my entire life. I felt lonely more times than I could possibly remember. I've been suicidal. I've been on the end of my despair, and I've come back to reality and I've gone, wow. The odds of us being alive is 400 trillion to 1. Everyone needs to realize the blessing that we've been given and this opportunity, this abundance of chance that we can use, leverage and tools and things to make an amazing life for us. I was homeless at 11 years old, right? I grew up in the project. Like I grew up next to drug dealers. I saw a guy stab himself to death. I mean, very graphic stuff. I know it's really ridiculous, right? I grew up in a very rough environment. I now run a 6 to 7 figure business. I drive a Tesla. I own my own house. I have staff. Things can turn around and you have the ability to do that. And I create like this idea that anything that I can conjure up, I can create in reality. Because people think that life happens to them, like, oh, I had a traumatic childhood, or I was beaten up, or I was abused, and all this stuff. And I get it. I've been there. I'm a guy, I've been in those situations, but I don't look at life and say, oh, it's happening to me. I say it's happening for me. What can I create out of this? Life is happening because of me. What can I learn out of a traumatic experience? I can supercharge my life because I can sit in the shower and cry on my own for days on end, but it doesn't do anything. It rots your mind. It deteriorates your person. It deteriorates you as a being. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to positively charge my life and say, okay, I accept that shit things happen to me. But you know what? Why don't I make good things happen to me? And that's the mindset. And so I create obsessions. I create obsessions. I'm obsessed with social media, digital marketing. And you guys are talking about sales. Sales can be a good thing. Sales can change people's lives. Do you know why? Because I sell courses to people that will change their life. I've had people literally say that I've saved their life daily, saying they saved my life because they took my course. Why? Because I offer them 10 times the amount of value for what they actually pay me. Somebody pays me $27 for a course. That thing's worth like $2,000. Why? Because I pack it with everything. I want to over deliver because I want you to have a better life. I don't want to just make money. It's not about making money. It's about making change. And that's the most interesting thing. I'm constantly chasing dopamine. I love it. And I think that, you know, if you can start changing the world, you may not be able to get to that end result, but if you start changing the world, you can start a progression of something, right? So this is really interesting. I'll tell you this is the last thing I'll say because I've probably gone over time. But everyone says to me like, "What is your end goal, Dan?" Do you know what my end goal is? I do autism advocacy. I sell books and courses and all this kind of stuff. My end goal is to make multi-billions, and the reason why I want to make multi-billions, not because I want to live in a house or a yacht or something, because I want to overhaul the American healthcare system to create healthcare free at the point of use, so I can actually help people. Do you know there's 52 million people in America who can't see a doctor when they're sick, and they could die from things like normal, like a common cold or cutting themselves on a piece of rusty iron. Absolutely disgusting. So we need to change this. My mindset is I need to help people. That's what I'm going to do. I may be a target by Big Pharma or whoever controls the American healthcare system. I don't care. Try it. Come at me, bro. I don't care. I'm going to change people's lives. I'm going to help as many people as possible, and I love every single person. If you guys want to learn anything else about me, you can go to theaspieworld.com or ask me questions here in the chat. You can follow me on all social media at the Aspie World. TheAspieWorld. Every single social media platform, even the obscure ones like Lemonade and Clipper and stuff like that. Thanks. Bye.
Dan, you are amazing, mate. I feel like I've just been in a tornado of Dan Jones and just like just absolutely incredible. Honestly, you're amazing. I
Thank
have
you.
no doubt. There's something that both you and Meg have shared today that really, really hit home with me, and it's the power of learned and lived experience. Like both of you are doing what you're doing because you've learned through what you've been through. And me personally, like so many others, we go through so much, but how do we look at that and how do we learn from that? And then how do we live our lives based on the things we've learned is something so special. And you guys are both like showcasing that in your daily moment to moment, minute to minute lives. Yeah, you're amazing, both of you. I'm actually going to I'm going to bring Meg back to the forefront. So there should be three of us here now. And I'm actually going to open the room out. So who would like to, you can feel free if you want to put your video on, you're more than welcome to. We have got some questions already coming through. But questions, basically, essentially, just write them into the chat and I will go ahead and ask them to the individuals, to Dan and to Meg. So Meg, I've got one that's come through privately for you straight away. How did you choose your ADHD coach? And what was the criteria? And also, what was the ADHD training? And did it teach you anything you didn't already know about having it?
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer that like the other way around. So yeah, so the training that I did was I trained through a company called ADHD Works, and it was like a 6-week course that I did because I was already trained up as a coach, so it was more about the ADHD element of it. And ADHD Works have this incredible framework that everybody gets trained in around executive functioning, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is where ADHDers have on average, like 30% developmental delay, basically. So basically, front part of our brains, the rational part of our brain, doesn't work as quick as neurotypical, if you like, neuronormative, whatever you want to call it. So that specific training was what they identify as kind of the main parts, the main challenges that ADHDers have when trying to operate in a world that's mostly made for neurotypicals. Hopefully that's not how it always is. So that was a specific training. It did teach me loads that I didn't know. It teaches you, like you can do loads of research on ADHD. You can go on TikTok, you can go on, Instagram, you can YouTubers, like you can Google it. Of course you can. You can absolutely get all that information. But the actual training that I did was about this information that you're getting, what do you now do with it? Like, how do you take it forward? How does it affect you personally in every day of your life? Because one of the things that I love is when we say, like, if you meet one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. Everybody presents differently. So my training definitely taught me a lot. And then from that, I've had 2 ADHD coaches now, one before I trained up and one afterwards. And to be honest, it's not just ADHD coaching in general, therapists, counselors, hairdressers, who you're friends with, like it's all about connection, like how connecting with that person. You could have an ADHD coach who's got the most incredible amount of skill and training, but you just might not vibe with them. So the first ADHD coach that I worked with, because there wasn't a lot when I first started looking, that was very much about I wanted to get on with her, and I wanted to know that I could be completely myself, because as I was learning, I masked a lot. And then my most recent coach that I've worked with, I wanted to specifically work with somebody who could help me with my business, with being an entrepreneur, being self-employed. And yeah, so what I would say is to people, like, do your due diligence, do your research, and never be scared to kind of, talk to a few different people, meet with a few different people. You don't have to go with the first person that you come across or that you have a chat with.
Thanks, Meg. Hopefully that answered the question. If not, then of course they can keep asking more questions. Dan, we've got a question. I've seen you put an answer, but maybe for the people who are not going on the chat. So essentially the question is, where are you? I've just lost you. Question for Dan: what kinds of things are you influencing in the government, and what was your breakthrough moment for that?
So basically, I've been asked a few times to help contribute towards legislation that Parliament will pass in the UK and the Senate here in Wales. I'm actually part of the consultation group for autismwales.gov, which we create services and opportunities for autistic individuals and kind of comment on what the legislation and policies should be regarding neurodiversity in Wales. One of the things I am doing is creating a database for a metadata-based gathering system, so we know exactly what services to provide to people on the autism spectrum, because it's one of the things the government weren't doing. In the EU Parliament, I briefed them on the employment gap between autistic individuals and non-autistic individuals, which is about 80% of autistic individuals are outside of work right now, which is absolutely abysmal. So we are doing all kinds of stuff at all ends. I was asked by Sir Lindsay, whatever his name is, the Speaker of the House, to go to Parliament to take part in their kind of disability campaign. I was invited by Sadiq Khan to go and attend as an ambassador for the NHS and YouTube the Labour conference in Liverpool a couple of months ago, and that was really good. So things like that, that's how I'm involved, because I kind of can put across a very compelling argument for things and really try and make some change.
Amazing. Thanks, Dan. I think one of the things is that the more that the government reach out to people with lived experience instead of academic, I think academics got its place as well, but how can we bring a voice to the people like yourselves and anyone else really, whatever that lived experience is, to get them into those spaces where change can happen? I think it's really, really important. I'm actually there's a question for both of you here, where I use, so the question is, and I see, Dan, you're quicker than me, so you've already seen it. But essentially, to you both, how many times did you bang on the doors before you got help with neurodiversity? I've just been told I need to restart my waiting period to be seen, as I got taken off the list due to a technical glitch and miscommunication with my GP.
Yeah, that's horrible. I'm sorry that's happened, Pete. Yeah, I can't comment on the waiting list thing because I I impatiently tried to jump over it. But what I will reference is my experience of, once I got my diagnosis, I was in employment at the time, and I did not let it go. So I brought up with my employment where I was employed that things were going to have to change. And unfortunately, I couldn't get them to change their minds on timesheets. But I wanted to talk about reasonable adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And it took a good few months. I got a lot of, yeah, no problem, we'll go away and come up with something and come back to you. And very similar to what Dan said, it's a lot to do with like boundaries and stuff like that. I would just keep pushing back of, okay, brilliant, you're going to go away. And when are you going to come back and talk to me? Like, I will not be ignored, basically. And I am now very aware that particular agency employer look at my LinkedIn posts and look at my Instagram pretty much every single day. And I'm like, yeah, I basically made work for me and I'm flourishing. So yeah, so never kind of let people talk you down, tell you what they think would be right for you. You know you best. And the other, I'm not sure in terms of the waiting list, but there's things like access to work, which you can apply for to get funding to help with, you can get coaching, you can get like job aids, stuff like that through access to work. And they are one that I am currently in quite a big battle with. And it's the same thing, similar to what Dan said. Find that complaints email address, get that phone number, like don't settle for we will get back to you. These things are in place for a reason to help you. Therefore, spam them all you want, like that's their job.
Sorry, Chris, can I just chime in as well? Like, and the reason I said, if anyone's read in the chat, and just going off what Meg said, I said 10x with everything, and this is like a life lesson for everything. Like, if you want somebody to hear you, you have to be loud as hell. So I'll send 10 emails per day to that person's inbox, so they know that 90% of the emails in their inbox has got my name on it. They'll have to read it, they'll have to reply, or they're going to ignore you. If you just send one email, they're going to ignore you anyway, bro. So literally, like 10x. Phone them, email them, visit the office, bang on the door, literally banging up. You say banging on the door. No, actually go to the door, drive there. If it's an hour away, do it. Like, because it's going to be worth it. Because if you're that desperate to speak to somebody, they're going to want to listen to what you have to say about it, right? Never give up. And that's with everything. I'm talking at VidCon this year again in Anaheim, right? I sent one email every hour, on the hour for 2 days straight. And they got back to me within one day saying, wow, I've had a lot of emails from you, the same thing. Yeah, let's do a panel. I was like, cool. So you have to get, if you want results, you have to put in the effort. Let me give you a very simple example of this, right? Energy in is energy out, right? If you want to get six-pack abs in the gym, you have to put the work in, right? Nothing happens just sitting on your bum eating crisps, right? So if you want a result, put the effort in that's as the same value or volume as the result you want. That's what you want. Or more, do more, because overdo it. Like me and my budgeting goal, if you want to save 1,000, save for 12,000, because if you come up short on 12,000, you're still going to hit your goal of 1,000. Hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, it does. I love it. I think there's so many life lessons in this. I'm so glad we recorded it, Dan. Thank you for that, mate. Right, before we go into the next questions, just to let everyone know that I have put in the chat the newsletter, the Tales to Inspire newsletter we've got going again. If you like the stories of Dan and Meg, we've shared over 150 stories so far since we started. They're amazing stories of all walks of life, and they're incredible. Essentially, our newsletter's there. Check it out, and you can find out more about what we're doing and everything that's going on, essentially. But moving on to the next questions, one of them that I've got is a direct question, and it's actually about leadership. Meg, you talked about leadership when you was sharing the story. This is to both of you, though, and it talks about leadership and how with neurodiversity. But I'm going to go a little bit further. All 8 of our ambassadors over the next 4 weeks are all entrepreneurs. So all the stories and things, which is, I didn't mean to do that, but they all have their own business. And leaders, Meg, you were told that you can't lead upwards, and you're not a great leader. And Dan, you have you have other people who are employed by you. How does this work with neurodiversity and being a leader and supporting others within your team, or supporting others as someone who looks up to you?
I think, well, it's not just a neurodiversity thing. The one thing, if you look at like our education system and stuff like that, and I actually, I didn't have an awful time at school, and on reflection, it's just because I did a lot of performing arts and chose subjects where I could just be a bit of a drama queen, to be honest. So kind of like supported my ADHD. But one thing with our schooling system is it's very set in the box that we can fit you in. And not just neurodiversity, like all of us have different strengths, different things that we're really, really good at. And unfortunately, that thing of you must fit into a box in school seems to then follow us into employment. So for me, I was incredible, creative. I was great at working with employees and providing stuff that they needed, but supposedly couldn't stand in front of a CEO and be professional. So I think for me, in terms of like leadership, and I guess I am a leader now, is being allowed to be what I call unapologetically you. And I worked in employee experience and internal comms for a long time, and we always got these companies coming to us saying, we need to make our culture work. How do we get everybody to be under the same culture? And what I realized over the years is that actually within companies, there's loads of little cultures. There's loads of tiny little cultures all going on. And actually, rather than trying to force everybody to be the same and to come under that one umbrella, how do we help people flourish in their own way? And I think as a true leader, that's trust, and that's just being open to ideas and guiding people rather than telling them what to do. And if you work with anybody who has ADHD, I would love to see you try and consistently tell them what to do, because we don't work that way.
I love it. Dan, have you got anything on that as well?
Yeah, it's funny. I did a scholarship with MIT in America, in Boston, Massachusetts. And I was invited over there by a foundation to do digital leadership for the disabled, right? So I was one of these, thought leaders. That's the term used, right? Thought leader. And one of the things that was striking was that it's not so much like, you're not micromanaging people. What you're doing is listening to individuals. And there's a quote from the Buddha that says, if we speak, we hear words we already know, but when we listen, we have the ability to learn something new. So if you're allowing yourself to be able to listen to somebody and learn from them, you can expand your business and look like a true leader because you're tangible, you're transparent. This is one of the most interesting things. Like Chris said this at the beginning of the episode. He said, I reached out to Dan. I didn't think he was going to message me back, but a true leader will message back. Like, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? Everybody's important. Everybody in the chain is equally as important to make the whole thing go forward. There's actually a book called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? You definitely recommend reading it because everything about what you do, down to the people you employ and the people that you are in front of leading forward, need to see you in a progression saying that this person is the person I want to be in front of me, leading me forward, and I want to be just like them, inspiring, right? So you have to be a few things. And the last thing I'll say in that is confidence. Confidence is king. The biggest thing with neurodiversity is people are not confident. I'm confident as hell. And I've learned that confidence. If you look at my first ever YouTube video to me now, hell of a difference. And I'm teaching that. It's my latest class is Chaos to Confidence, right? Because I realized that that's why people follow me, because they see me as a confident, very established person that's leading something. They want to be like me. And that's what a leader is. Somebody you have affinity for, a likeness for, somebody I want to aspire to be. So if you can be somebody that can be inspirational to the many, you become a leader. And that's truly what it is, with no ulterior motive, of course.
Of course, of course. And this is, I've just got a comment on there as well. Neurodiverse people have amazing leadership talents, judging emotions and being able to connect the dots and seeing the bigger picture. Azim's just put in there as well. So absolutely. Now, in terms of education, and I go into so many schools with what we do at Tales to Inspire, and I don't really want to put judgment on this. I want to kind of put it to you guys. What are your thoughts in terms of how do we, in an education setting, and it's different in Wales than it is into England a little bit, how do we support people with neurodiversity? Do we support it? Is there enough in place? Is there more that can be done? And if so,
how? It's not just neurodiversity. One of the things that I say a lot in the Joy Project is that I'm basically teaching people stuff that we should have been taught at school. So stuff around like your core values, like Dan talked about, confidence, resilience, all those kind of things. I would vote for that over Pythagoras theorem all day long. And I think, from a neurodiversity angle, it's just sending home even more that idea of that it's okay to be different. And again, like I said before, in terms of like kind of being put in a box, the story I always talk about is my maths classes. I'm not good at maths at all, standard maths, if you like. And yet I was in top set for everything else. So I was put in top set for maths, and I just could not get my head around it at all, and was very much, by the teacher that I had, led to believe that I was stupid or that I was being naughty, because I'd literally be like, I don't get it. And it was very much that thing of, well, you must get it, you're just pretending that you don't. I spent years thinking maybe I was just pretending, like how could everybody else get it and not me? So I don't know. It is teaching kids. There is work we can be done with kids, but it's also the educators as well. It's the teachers as well. And I haven't been to school in a very long time, so maybe they do already get this training. I don't know. But when it's such a set curriculum, I think teachers would struggle to be able to provide individual children with what they need, the same as employers struggle to provide employees with what they need, is probably what I would say.
And Meg is right. Individual learning plans is the way forward. Now, if we think about these, especially here in the UK, it's the same in Wales as it is in England because it's a UK-wide one. The current curriculum education system was set up to accommodate Isambard Kingdom Brunel's Industrial Revolution, right? And so it was created to make you a disciplined worker that could be cubicalized in a format where you take orders, right? If you think about the idea of school, you put your hand up if you can use the toilet. Are we insane? This doesn't make much sense. But we all go along and we follow it. It's become almost I don't know, matrixified. Like you're in a small matrix, right? Or a matrices. Now, to combat this, what we are seeing, there's a shift in how SEN and ALN is kind of handled within the school system. Now we have SENCOs, or special education needs coordinators. Some of them have training in special education needs, some of them don't, because what happens is they'll represent somebody within the school to champion the disability or the ALN, right? But so that's a big issue, right? That there isn't, so no, not everybody has the training. There isn't enough training available, and a lot of the training is wrong. How do you combat that is very simple. And if we look at 2020 taught us something very interesting. We had distance learning. And what we had with distance learning was the ability to access to new technologies, or what I like to say, new or the abundance of new opportunity. When Isambard Kingdom set up those installations of workhouses and cotton mills and all those kind of things from the Industrial Revolution, we were looking at technology for the future. We were like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. So we set up schooling around that. And now you look, hundreds of years in the future, we a land grab of creating social economies, social networks on social media. And I don't say that just because I'm a social media influencer, but it can change lives. It can connect people who are lonely. It can create dating lives. It can create working opportunities. It can create friendships, family gatherings, remote Christmas dinners. The whole thing is there for the taking, but we don't instruct people to understand that. And I think that, so there's two parts. As one is we need to come up to speed with the technology that we're using in terms of how we look at how the systems of people who go through scholastic environments. And then also we need to look at the individual as a person who needs a specific learning plan. That's the idea. And I think we do have that with personal learning development plans. And our company's set up to do that with the schools. And it's now a legal requirement. Everyone, no matter what their ability, is allowed one.
Thank you so much. And I think that really answers that question really well. So thank you both for that. Now, I know we've got some more questions through. We are out of time. The questions are, Kelly, I'm going to actually, if it's all right with you, I'm going to put you in touch with, it's specifically for Dan. So essentially, Kelly, I'll put you in touch with Dan, if that's okay with you. Just send me a private message if it is, and I'll put you both in touch with that question. And then we can go from there. And there's another question that's come through from Daniela, essentially asking about what happens post 18 when you're neurodiverse. And I think that's also for Dan as well. So I'm actually going to send that over to you as well, Dan, if that's okay. If Danielle's all right. So essentially just send me a private message on this Zoom just to make sure that it is okay for me to basically pair you together for those questions. That'd be great. Finally, for everyone today, I'm just going to put on the meeting on the group our 4 events that we have. So if you liked this event, the next 3 events are 7 o'clock next week, the week after, and the week after that. And next week's about overcoming trauma with Jamie Rudd and Marion Adejoken. Their stories are just remarkable. The trauma that they got told, essentially both of them, that they weren't going to live. They were told that they were end of life and essentially to give up. And they didn't. And it's years later and they are absolutely thriving. They're amazing people. And I can only recommend you coming to this. But before anything, I want to say thank you to Meg and Dan. You are both just remarkable human beings. And you're already doing it. And I'm never going to accept when anyone comes to me and says, oh, it's all right, I'm helping one person now. Because Dan, you've just come to me and 10x'd everything. I think 10x is my literally word for the year now.
It's true, Chris, man. Like, what's the point of helping one person when you have the ability to help literally 9 billion people? Reach for the stars and you'll end up reach for the stars and you'll end up somewhere among the moon. Isn't that something Oscar Wilde said?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure if it's exactly...
Or the other way around. Like, reach for the moon, you'll end up among the stars.
Yes, I think that's the one. I think it was, you were nearly there, Dan.
Hashtag dyslexia.
I love it. Right. Amazing. Thank you so much to everyone. Once again, we've plugged in our newsletter, the website, Dan's story, what Dan's up to, the Aspie World, the Joy Project, next week's event, and everything that's all things inspirational. So I just want to say a huge thank you once again to everyone who logged in, and hopefully we will see you again. So see you later, everyone, and thank you so much.